Um, Hi, happy to be here. My name is Yotam. I'm from Tel Aviv University, and I'm here to share with you some insights from the research that we've been doing for the past year and a half, together with Lior Zalmanson, also from Tel Aviv, and Mor Naaman from Cornell Tech. So a little bit of background and motivation. If we think about what the internet was about 15 years ago, with the beginning of the user-generated content, creators economy, and the social platform. So there was a promise of democratization of the creation and publication of content online, driven by lower entry costs. Anyone can publish, potential access to potentially global audiences that were to bring more channels, more content, and more diversity. And the business model behind that was the ad business model. So while a lot of that came true, there were also some challenges, and I think we can argue that we didn't quite get the democratized internet that we were hoping for. So I want to go through a few of these challenges and see what we might do about that, perhaps. So we were saying that this new internet, or the internet, would be good for activists. Here comes everybody talks about the role that social networks took in the Arab Spring. But there are also voices, most prominently Gladwell and Morozov, who criticize social networks, social network activities or likes or share, changing the profile picture on Facebook, their limited ability to translate it into a more meaningful contribution. So this was talked about as a question of activism versus slacktivism or clicktivism, which is basically asking whether online activism, is it a complementary or a substitute for more meaningful, impactful activism? When I do like and share, am I more likely to also do meaningful contribution for those causes, or do I feel that I've done my part and the overall contribution to the activity is reduced? So that's one issue. We're also talking about openness and inclusivity. However, a lot of the power fell into the hands of the big platforms, and it's not always in their best interest to promote these values. As we can see in this anecdotal but telling example from TikTok, so documents that were leaked at March 2020, if I remember correctly, shows that TikTok told moderators on the platform to suppress posts by people that were considered ugly, poor, or disabled. Another major issue is the uneven revenue distribution among the creators on the platform. So if we think about YouTube or Spotify, for example, 90% of the streaming royalties on Spotify go to the top 1.4% of musicians. On YouTuber, 96.5% of the YouTubers don't make enough to break the US poverty line. And on Twitch, the streaming platform, the top 1% of all streamers on Twitch earn more than half of all the revenues. So an important question that we need to ask ourselves as researchers, as designers of policy, and platform owners, creators that are here in the room, is which strategy for online monetization we can promote, or we can take that will promote this vision of more open and democratized internet and encourage creators' contributions, the creation of quality content, and also facilitate meaningful online activism. The study that I'll show today, that's the first that we have done with the support of Grant for the Web. So that's almost 2 years that we've been studying the effects of increasing transparency around the monetization of online content and seeing how that affects user behavior. But monetization awareness, increasing monetization awareness, it's not really an intuitive move, perhaps, for most creators or platforms, because when we're a user, we like to think about, we like to get our content, right? We like to watch videos on YouTube, we like to get our articles, but we don't really like to think about the money aspects of that. we don't always aware that there is a transaction behind that. We like to think about the communal aspects of the creator's economy. We don't like to think about it as transactions, but we think that there is something to it and that it's important to understand this aspect of the monetization models and in general of the relationship between the users and the platforms, because we think that it's important characteristic that can tell us a lot about why different monetization models operate or impact users' behavior differently, and that it could be a tool for creators, activists operating online. We think that it's like that because that monetization awareness will make users more mindful about their content choices, that it will increase the alignment between their values and the content that they are choosing, and that's something that could be used. If we see this example, so this website is very open about the fact that it's monetized and it's aligning that with the cause, with this mission that it promotes about providing support for research on breast cancer, etc. So if we take a step back and see how everything connects and how is this even related to web monetization. So when we think about different monetization models, each monetization model will have different characteristics, and this will also affect the level of monetization awareness that it creates among the users. So if we think about the subscription model, it's a high awareness of the monetization and making an aware decision to make a subscription to a certain platform. Compared to the ad business model, I think that when we are just seeing ads, we're less aware of the transaction. We don't know when the transaction happened, if it's enough that I'm just seeing the ad, or only if I click, only if I purchase something. And we also learn to ignore ads. So when I go to a website, there are ads there. I don't necessarily think of it as a transaction that's happening and as a monetary support to the platform. When we think of web monetization and how it was operational by Coil, so first it's a subscription, so we're starting from a high monetization awareness point, but also if we think about the add-on that indicating whenever I go to a site that is getting my money, so there is and the counter that appears sometimes, so there is a continuous awareness of the user of the transaction of the monetization aspect of his web browsing. So we were interested in studying in our research what's higher awareness of the monetization, how does this affect users' behavior and their choice of content, and because we thought that it will create a higher alignment between the user values, their ideological and political views, and other relevant factors that will depend on the context, we thought that users' identity would also be an important factor in this formula. And also we're interested in seeing how this would affect users' willingness to provide additional support to these causes, sort of like looking at the activism versus slacktivism question. And we think that perhaps increasing the monetization awareness will also lead people to being more willing to provide additional support. This could be seen as driven by the foot in the door effect, saying that when people agree to a minor request, they would be more likely to also agree later to a larger request from the same, related to the specific cause. So our research question in general were, what is the role of social awareness and social activism in content consumption decision? We were using user survey to study that. And then we were also interested in looking how users' awareness of their browsing time funds creator and activists, whether that turns them into more socially aware consumers. And we were running a few experiments to study this question. And our main result, just to give you the overview already, our surveys show that people make ideological and value-related considerations in their online content consumptions, and also that people view online content consumption as a way of supporting creators and causes. And from our experiments, we find that monetization awareness leads users to prefer content from non-profit organizations and from independent creators and activists over that of mainstream media. So a little bit more detailed of what you did and the specific findings that we have. We're also interested in our survey to look at how users' general view toward the online monetization model. I'll show you some of the more interesting questions and results that we have. We asked people how they feel about the trade-off between subscription fees and like free content versus higher subscription fees. We ask them to rate whether they prefer free content with many ads, low subscription fees and some ads, or higher fees and no ads. And for each of these content categories, so for video streaming, for online news, and for video platform, and for social networks. So we're seeing that for most of the category, most of the people, or the majority of the people, preferred free content and many ads. That's true for the online news, video platform, and social networks, with the exception being the video streaming, where the majority of the people prefer higher fees and no ads, but also substantial amounts of people are also okay with a mixture of ads and subscription or free content with seeing ads. Another question that we are interested in is how people feel about the distribution of the fees that they pay, how they want it to be distributed among the creators. So we are seeing that the most popular option that we offer was the one by which the funds, the subscription fees that user will pay, they want it to be distributed based on the time people spend on each creator's content. And the second most largest option was even distribution between the creators whose content you consume. People less liked, or the two other options were custom choice, by which you decide who gets what at the end of the month, or an even distribution between all of the creators on the platform. So those are the two that received the only 12 and 13% of support from the participants. We'll now move to the results of the surveys about the role of social awareness and social activism in content consumption decisions. So we're seeing overall support of users regarding the statement or agreement with statements such as, I consume content by creators who share my values and beliefs, and I choose to go to sites that reflects my values and beliefs. We're seeing most people agreeing with that. We're also seeing an overall support of people with the statement that by reading articles and watching videos, they show my support to the creators and the causes they promote. We're also seeing general support, a little bit less, but in overall, with the statement that it's important to me to read articles and watch videos created by people from historically marginalized group. But what we're seeing is that we didn't see in the other statement is that when we segment the results by the user's political preference, perhaps unsurprisingly, we're seeing that Democrats and centrists are supporting this statement, but Republicans are not. Feel free to stop me if you have any question at any point. We're now finishing with the results from the surveys and moving to the result of the experiments. That's the most interesting part in my opinion, because we were able to look at the causal relationship between increasing monetization awareness and users' behavior. So our experiment design, we had two groups. One, we'll call it the treatment group, the other is a control. They were going through the same process, exact same process, with one exception, which is in the treatment group, we took measure to increase people's awareness of the monetization process on YouTube. And the way we did that is using this question you're seeing on the right. We asked people, how much of the money YouTube generates from ads do you think goes to the creators of the video? Straight after that, we also gave them the answer, which is 55%. I didn't think that it's that high before we got into that. So this was meant just to increase their awareness, to let them know that there is a monetization process going on YouTube, that creators are receiving money when you're watching their content, if there is an ad there. And control condition received a similarly structured question, but that has nothing to do with monetization. So that's just to keep the balance between the two conditions. And then what we were interested in seeing which video they choose from a search result page that we simulated for them, a YouTube search result page. So we gave them the scenario of, we asked them to imagine that they're looking to learn more about, that's in study 1, learn more about the subject of gun regulation. They then saw these simulated results. They had to choose one, and they knew that we'll ask them questions about the content later. So that's the scenario. If you look at the video specifically, what we can see here is that there are 2 that are from right-leaning sources. That would be the Fox News and the Gun Owners of America. 2 from left-leaning media sources, or not necessarily media, but left-leaning sources. That's the March for Our Lives and MSNBC. And inside of each category, or an additional segmentation that is there, is between mainstream media, Fox News and NBC, and nonprofit organizations. So we're looking to see how their choice of content differs between those whose awareness of the monetization we increased and the control group on both of these verticals. And if we look first at the mainstream media versus nonprofit organization, we're seeing that when we move from the control group to the one with a higher monetization awareness, the support for the choice of videos from nonprofit organization doubles nearly, from 25% to 48%. And the mainstream media choice reduces. It's a trade-off between the 2. When we look at the co-partisan choice, co-partisan meaning whether or not people choose in alignment with their own views, we're not seeing a difference there. It's roughly 78% both in the control and in the high awareness condition. This might be due to a ceiling effect. Since we're seeing such a high polarization to begin with, then the manipulation might not have enough power to create an effect there. So that might be causing that. But overall, good news that we're not seeing that this increases polarization. Next, I'll skip that due to time limitations. We wanted to also look at a different context that is not political, so we're in different types of videos. So we were looking at mainstream media versus independent creators or activists. The first stage of the experiment was the same. We increased their monetization, and the scenario here is wanting to learn more about living with disability and disability rights. And the videos we choose were either, again, by mainstream media, PBS or Wall Street Journal here, or from individual independent creators, activists on the topic. There was a pool of 4 videos from each kind, and we randomly presented 2 from each category and randomly ordered them. Also in the previous study. What we see here is, again, a shift from the control group, a shift from mainstream media to it should be vloggers, not non-profit organization here on the graph. So a shift from the mainstream media to the vloggers when we increased monetization awareness of the users. That's statistically significant. This difference from 46 to 61%. What we also did different here is that we asked people why they choose this video. So if we look at their answers, we're seeing additional support to our hypothesis regarding that people, I think that the vlogger, will benefit more from watching the video rather than ABC, so wanting to provide support to the specific creators. I initially chose CNN, but figured the individual channels need my views and stuff like that. We did not see answers like that in the control condition, when we didn't increase the monetization awareness. How am I doing with time? I'm wrapping up. So overall, we found that awareness of monetization leads users to update their choices. Monetization-aware users prefer to consume content from nonprofit organizations or independent creators, and activists over that of mainstream media outlets. They also see their content consumptions as means to supporting creators and causes. What we can do with that, creators can take measures to increase the visibility of their monetization process and increase users' awareness of the monetization. And we think that the web monetization in Coil, with how it was operationalized, is an excellent solution for that. So we will suggest creator to experiment with this. That would be all. If you have any questions.
I'm Tiffany Boyle and loved learning, about web monetization just based on your. But curious how you were prompting people. I mean, I think that's one of the struggles Coil and web monetization in general has is like, how do you communicate, like, get this membership, get the subscription, it's going to help support creators when you have about 2 seconds to get their attention.
You meaning how do I get more people into Coil to begin with, or?
Not to Coil, but just that messaging or that prompting that makes them wrap their head around the fact that they are supporting a small creator, right? Like how did you get that prompt across for them that the signal went off in their mind? Oh, I'd rather potentially, this matters to not go to CNN and I'm going to go to the vlogger instead.
So in this case, we did not do that like a creator by creator, but it was more general increase of their awareness of the monetization process in the platform, which I think is something that is, if we go back to Coil, is kind of built in the platform as long as you're using the add-on and everything. So we were just more interested in assuming that this is something that comes with the web monetization and with Coil built in, what would it do in the relationship between creators and consumers? I think it's important to understand because you can increase the, the visibility of that, or you can decrease that depending on your preference or where you are located, which content you are, I think, promoting, which causes you are related to, what is your audience. I think that's something that would also change that. I hope that answers. Yeah.
Hi, Travis from Coil. I was just curious about, did you look into anything about how people, like, do they care how much was being sent to the site? Like, would they have wanted to send more to different creators, or did they kind of like ask like how much are they getting supported versus ads?
No. We're looking at something like that in a previous study where we were looking at the trade-off between showing different types of counters, whether I created as a creator, whether I got X amount of money versus X amount of views versus, I don't have all of the data right now, but maybe we can talk about this later because I think this might be interesting for you. We were, just to finish, we would be very happy to do a field experiment if there is any like platform owners or with you guys from Coil to see how this works with actual users and with Coil. So if that's an option, we'll be very happy to discuss how we can do that.